it's kind of poetic, honestly, right? Is that this card called Grief is literally destroying the game.
Distraction makers.
I tracked down some of the first ever strategy articles that were written for Magic.
Yeah.
There's this old Magic website called the Dojo, and one of the articles that was on there, a famous article, kind of cited as what might be the first strategy-focused Magic article, called Schools of Magic by Robert Hahn. And he basically talks about, at the time, in the really early days of tournament Magic, he talks about these different schools of thought, basically, in terms of approach to Magic strategy.
Right.
The article is an article. I think it's probably a collection of articles, but now it's just like a text document.
A huge one.
It's about 42 pages long in a like a Google Doc. So what I guess sort of struck me in this moment was this idea that Magic had inspired this kind of analysis, this kind of dedication to the game. At a certain point in time, and it got me thinking about sort of the state of the game as it is today, and that the winds have changed. Right, we are now sailing in a much different direction than what we were when I started playing the game. The Magic, the sort of the version of Magic that I grew up with and that was so important to me, is not the version of Magic that is here now. And I'm not trying to say that the Magic that we have now is any better or worse for the people who are playing it. But I do think that what is tough in this moment is acknowledging that there was this history here, and it feels like this stuff was important. But when you look at like where we're at now, it doesn't feel nearly as important as it once did.
Right.
And so I guess the thing that I wanted to talk about why we're here, what it means for the game, and in some ways that this is where Magic is supposed to be. And the anomaly may have been that for 20 years, the focus, 20-ish, whatever, years, the focus was on building a game made for the most competitive of players.
Yeah.
Which is a very small percentage of the overall players who play Magic.
I think, just to caveat, it wasn't always like everything wasn't made for the most competitive of players. Sure. However, the overall focus was to make sure that it was a healthy, competitive environment, believing that is what fed the thing. And I think that what you're touching on is something that a lot of other Magic players are probably feeling right now. Right. And I think in a much more heated way, though, right?
Yeah. And you know, I think it's important to take a step back here and sort of analyze, again, why we're here and why this is kind of where we should be.
Right. As opposed to what many people are kind of saying, which is, well, we want to go back. No one likes what's happening. We want to go back. I want to go back to what Magic used to be. It'd be so much better for the game. Oh,
right. And in reality, I don't think that's true. I think that the direction where Magic is headed is what's best for the game, but it's not what's... It literally is just not what's best for tournament Magic, for, like I said, the Magic that I grew up with.
Yeah.
So, you know, the other thing that kind of brought this up is that, you know, we've seen over the last few years, and I didn't necessarily want to talk about this until I felt like there was sort of enough mounting evidence that I can say, you know, look, their focus probably is not in the health of a tournament environment anymore. I think that what we could say is that their focus is on fun and not on function, right? It's in how do we create a game that is the most fun for its players, and let them decide the function, right? This is very much the philosophy of commanders, the rules committee, the band list for commander. It's like in your own group, you can decide what fun looks like for you, and you can rule zero in or out anything that's in the game. But yeah, when we look at the early days of Magic, we look at early days, I guess the first 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Where the game is focused on tournament play. It's focused on competitive play. And the designs that are being made in a way that is good for that environment. We see standard as sort of the premier format. It's a rotating format. and it's Friday Night Magic. Friday Night Magic is a tournament environment. I think that period of time was sculpted by the fact that Wizards of the Coast didn't really have a way to design for the casual audience.
Right. They knew the casual audience was there. They had the data showing.
Yeah.
And Mark Rosewater always talks about how kitchen table Magic is the most popular way of playing Magic. That it was, I mean, like astronomically the most popular way. I don't know what the percentages are. I don't think they've ever released them.
Right. I mean, the vibes, I guess, that we got from Mark Rosewater was basically like 90-10, right? Like 10% of players will ever play in a tournament, and ever play in a Friday Night Magic tournament.
Which is not that surprising if that is the breakdown.
It is a very high stakes, high stress environment. So, you know, when we look at like the steps that it took to get us here, right, in terms of Commander becoming sort of the focused format, social media giving sort of inroads into a more casual audience, into people's living rooms instead of into the game store.
Yeah.
We can kind of go, okay, well, this makes a certain amount of sense, right? There's the type of player that plays this game, that has always played this game, that has always been the majority of the player base, now can get information and product directly to them, instead of through, like, sort of being funneled through the competitiveness of the game.
Sort of felt like at one point in time, and I mean, this was my own personal experience with other card games, less so Magic, but having to go to a card store, and in doing so, you sort of see peripherally, oh, there's these tournaments, and there's this culture and environment, and like, this is how I have to access this product, and in doing so, I'm seeing other people, but they are interacting with this product in this very specific way. Yeah. Whereas outside of the store, I would just go and play Yu-Gi-Oh with my friends.
There's no visibility. Right. You're right. Right. The internet, social media in general, all the, you know, YouTubers making Commander content and things, that's like what is now most visible in terms of what Magic is.
It's also most understandable that more people would be attracted to a casual, entertaining style of play as opposed to hardcore competitive play.
Right. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. And designing for fun rather than for function makes so much sense in that context. It does feel a bit like a passing of the torch, right? It's like, okay, well, you know, this Magic that I knew that was Magic to me is no longer the focus. And like I said, I think it is what kind of makes the most sense for the game. The game has been more successful now than it was. And it's hard, I think, especially, you know, as online watching videos or making videos about Magic, like we're in a very small percentage.
We're in the 1% of people that are following and looking at Magic content,
and it's hard to keep that perspective, right? Because, you know, I'll catch myself having these reactions to things and going, like what? Like why? How?
No one wants this.
No one wants this. And it just doesn't. It doesn't matter, right?
Meanwhile, it's like you might be on the Magic Reddit, and everyone on Reddit is like, "This is the Magic community." And it's not. Yeah. That's, maybe 5% of the Magic community, and probably not even that.
Right. Like Magic is doing better than ever without any kind of focus on tournaments, right? We've seen, and this is kind of a life cycle that we've seen in other games, right? Like esports not doing great, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just not how people consume games, right? Is that there's a very small percentage of people that care.
Yeah.
And if you're designing for that minority, there's a whole swath of other people that are just sort of like getting the cast-offs, right? They're just sort of like, things are trickling down to them instead of being designed for them.
These new sets are constantly coming out. You have to constantly be following it up. Stuff is rotating out. You don't have that like baseline thing to focus on, where Commander removes that stress. And instead, Commander sort of has this great onboarding mechanic where it's saying, well, pick a commander that you like. Yeah. Just pick one that sounds cool, looks cool, whatever, and then you can make a deck from that.
Commander and Standard are so different from each other that we end up in like super weird territory that I don't know how you reconcile. Because
I don't think you do. Right?
The problem is that you kind of have to, right? Because if you're printing these cards, I mean, maybe not Standard. Maybe Standard can be separate, and the sets that are printed into Standard aren't things that are printed at a power level that Commander cares about. We see them trying to kind of split the baby a little bit on things, because you have like Bloomborough Standard and you have Bloomborough Commander stuff, right? And that's like, well, the Commander stuff's not going to be in the Standard format.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to work. I am concerned long term that we will get less and less product that's designed for standard just because there's just not the audience for it.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Universes Beyond. I think that it makes perfect sense to team up with other brands that people have a vested interest in, and now there's Magic cards for them. And as a I guess a curmudgeonly boomer Magic player, it makes me furious that I have to see Rick from The Walking Dead. And
furious.
It does, honestly. I hate it. I absolutely hate the fact that there's you could sit down at a table to play Magic and there's Rick Grimes on one side and Slicer from Transformers on the other side and Dalsim from Street Fighter. To me, I'm this my verisimilitude is destroyed. Right?
I think it's funny because I think that I think there's many people that are in the same boat as you that aren't even Magic players. It's people that might even be coming from the outside that are looking at that and they're like, oh, that's kind of silly. But then there's other people that are like, oh, but I actually like Transformers, so I'm gonna get the Transformers cards. But I think that hits everyone in all games.
Sure. Well, it really is Magic becoming kind of this universal system instead of it being sort of this special little thing that it was at some point. And again, my feelings aside, because they don't matter, this is just what's best for the game.
Right. It's clearly been profitable.
Right. Lord of the Rings is the highest grossing Magic set of all time.
Yeah.
Why would they not continue to do that? If you don't like an IP, I don't know, I guess you can skip it. Right.
Used to be.
Well, what's funny is in a casual environment, you can skip it. But I think what's weird is that we have, and our channel could easily be accused of this, is that we have a strategic, systems-driven mindset. It's so much more welcoming to create an environment where, players are just having a good time.
To easily summarize kind of what we're talking about here is that prior to Commander, there was never an official format of casual Magic.
That's true.
And so as much as that probably created a lot of creative freedom, I remember, having 80 card decks or whatever and playing with dumb cards and making weird decks with my friends or whatever. And that was very fun. Now there's this sort of formal format that multiple people can play with, because I also remember being young and a lot of the time casual Magic was, oh, you're third person? Sure, yeah, we'll all play together. That'll be fun. And now you just have a format that is the official version of that.
I think what I'm left with here at the end of just sort of this, I don't know, what is this?
It's a therapy session.
This is a therapy session, I guess.
You're letting go, letting your childhood out. You're saying you're releasing it.
I'm not,
You're
though. I'm getting to that.
Oh.
So,
okay.
For me, in this instance, what I plan to do with this feeling that I have still is to make my own games.
Right.
Is that I'm going to take this experience that I had, I'm going to let the magic of today go, and I'm going to attempt to create something that at least is in the spirit of what was before.
And I think that we're always pretty encouraging of that, where it's I mean, I always feel like it's one of two things that gets people to start making anything as an artist or as a creator of anything, is either you're making stuff because you see something, you go, well, I could do better than that. Or you're making stuff because you want to like a thing, or you did like a thing or whatever, and it's changed, and now you're wanting to sort of adapt that, and you were inspired by something. And I think it's a very healthy thing to do. It's not about changing obviously Magic is successful. I think people are talking about the things that are happening in Magic as well, this is the death of it. And
it is in a sense
a death. It's a death. But it's also a sort of rebirth, right? At the same time. Yeah. And I think if that's the case, the game might not be for you. Grief, right? And then
the card grief. Yeah.
Saying meaning grief.
It's kind of poetic, honestly, right? Is that this card called Grief is literally destroying the game, right?
What's grief do?
Grief is literally the card that so there was a legacy tournament that was scheduled that got banned or it got canceled because Grief needs to be banned in like the legacy format. Grief is one of the evoke elementals that you can exile a card from your hand
because they reprinted them, right?
Yeah, they reprinted Modern Horizons 3. And again, I'm just like, look, this is the tournament. This is the quintessential example of that. The tournament play is not the focus anymore.
Right. So Grief.
Yeah.
Everyone let their griefs out. Okay. The card.
Right.
Yeah, and actual
griefs.
griefs.
Get them out. Get them out of here.
And then decide what to do with that. You could turn it into something positive, or you could just go and you move on, right? You find another game that tries to fulfill that. If you can't find that, then maybe look into creating something.
So one thing I wanted to bring up too is that there's a lot of talk about how money is the driving problem here, and in some ways I think that there is validity to that.
Yeah.
But I do think that reminding ourselves that what money is, right? Money is a tool that is a way to sort of tell a company or a person or whatever that the thing that they're doing is something that you like.
Yeah.
And so when we sit here and say, well, Magic is just trying to make as much money as possible, it's like, well, yeah, but that's the metric that they have to say, hey, what we're doing is working.
Right.
So the thing that we need to keep in mind is that like creativity and art has sort of like always been subject to the whims of capital, right? In that the people who got to make art back in the Renaissance and the Baroque period were people who were funded by the church, right? We had the Catholic Church that pays Michelangelo, pays Bernini to like make these sculptures,
right?
And basically be able to live a life free of the confines of capitalism, and get to focus entirely on their art. And I think the difference and thing we need to remember today is that where that money is coming from, right? The money that Magic is making, rightfully or otherwise, I guess, is coming from the people. It's coming from the people who are playing the game,
right? And
it's not coming from some entity that is saying, yes, make this art for me, right? It's not that.
Right.
It's a game, it's art that is being made for the people who are purchasing it. And of course, in that instance, you go, yeah, this is what makes sense, right?
Right. I think a lot of people, I mean, you can point out that like obviously they need to make more money in order to appease investors, in order to appease the company, et cetera. But like if it wasn't working, things would change. But things clearly are working and people are still investing money into it, meaning people are fine with a large amount of people are supporting this and funding this.
And there's something to be said for, is this sustainable? We don't really know.
Right.
But as of now, this is the path forward. And honestly, again, I don't want to, like, it feels weird to be in this situation defending this, but like I'm just sitting here saying, duh. Like, of course this makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Like this is what has made Magic $1 billion company.
There's never been a better possibility for Magic to appease casual audiences than what it currently has available to it. It's able to get directly to the casual audiences and give them a product that they can like, and also extend beyond to people that like other IPs and bring them into that casual format, which is the best way of someone playing Magic.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think, the thing to just keep in mind is that like the money's coming from somewhere. It's coming from the players. What I will also say though is that I do think there is a large swath of players who are sort of becoming disenfranchised with what is happening.
Right.
And maybe it's that there is no viable alternative. And if there was, maybe things start to look a little different.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, for myself as someone who has, invested a lot of time in this game for, decades at this point, the feeling, like the thing that I played Magic for is not really there anymore. And so the question really just becomes, what are we going to do about it?